Cheers. Huzzah. I already got most of my drink drank.
Okay, but I'm also on my second one.
Yeah, well, change the batteries too. Change my batteries. That's what I'm doing.
Did you mean to hit?
Huh? Yeah, that was a good shot, wasn't
You
it?
hit the computer.
All right, let's get rolling. Guys, we're back with another episode of what we are calling, well, holy smokes, going digital. Right?
The reviews were in after that first
Yeah.
episode. 100,000
Smashing!
views.
We got replaced. Drew and Cohl are gone. We are replaced with Drew number 2 and Cohl number 2. We'll see if we do better
The
than
reviews
previous
are in.
ones.
Comments were positive. People wanted us to make another episode, so we went for it.
And you know what? Any of the guys from original Holy Smokes who see this, like, we're doing this. Cool. Like, why are we doing this here? Why are we here talking in front of this, going through these devotionals? Is to
Because we're narcissists and people want to see us on camera.
oh, of course, right. But
we have great ideas, and everyone should know what they are.
more so, we want to honor a legacy of Doc, of Thomas Paige, and his awesome teachings, and the great part of our lives that he was, and the great blessing he was to us in our life, and the way he showed us Christ, and how Christ thinks of us, how to interpret the Bible, how to apply biblical truths to our lives. Goes on and on and on. We love the man, and we want to be able to really do justice by that, to go back into his devotionals that he's done with us through the years,
Many
decades, that he was really doing Bible study with us, and want to be able to dive into that, come up with any thoughts that we have, anything that we remember Doc saying, and really just be able to live that out. So come join us as we're going on in. It's like we're hopping into the deep end of a pool. We're swimming. We're getting there. We're getting real comfy. Hopefully not peeing in the pool. Don't pee in our pool. But
the blue stuff.
The blue stuff will tell us that you're peeing in it. But
stupid thing to say.
That's a great thing to say. So Cole, before we start, you're looking especially cozy today. and Hebrew? I don't know.
Cozy and Hebrewish. Well, this is my prayer shawl. Yeah, I figured I'd bust it out. It's got a bunch of verses for Jesus as the Messiah, which...
Here, show your camera there. Show your camera. There you go.
My computer's in the way for the devotional, but there's a bunch of prayers at the corner. I'm not going to explain it. I think people should just do their research and figure out what it is.
Bring back prayer on clothing and and on
Bring
your
back
home.
Make prayer tassels great.
Make prayer. No one said that. Why are people not saying that?
That is what needs to be on hats and billboards and stuff.
Well, hey man, would you like me to read this one? I know you got the honor reading the last one. Should I read this, or would you like to?
I mean, I'm fine with reading it,
Yeah?
but if you want to read it, by all means read it.
All you, my man.
Will you read it?
I will read it. Okay, alright, okay. This is good fun. Let's see here. Holy Smokes Weekly Devotional, June 27th. So this is a relatively recent one. Greetings. I apologize in advance if this devotional offends you. With that out of the way, let's get started with this. Christ is not difficult. Life can be difficult, but he is not. One of the things that can make life difficult and seems to make him difficult is trying to figure out and perform what would make him pleased with me in this moment. That is a dead-end street. One way I have heard this expression from pastors, preachers, and worship leaders goes something like this. Today, I want them to see less of me and more of Jesus. Less of me, more of him. Smaller me, bigger Jesus. Doesn't that sound just about as godly as you can get? Top that, one problem that is not biblical. It was a calling for only one person in history, for John the Baptist. That was his role. When it is said or prayed on the side of a cross, it reveals that a person does not understand what took place in his or her salvation. One of the things that took place in your salvation was that a brand new creature was born. This new creature is one inhabited by Jesus. The old person was killed and the new one born. There is no longer a bad me that needs to be made less. He wants you to live large, so to speak, because that is where he can be seen in and through you and me. This is the main way he's living his life in this world through us. He made you unique. He wants there to be a you on this planet, in your neighborhood, in this moment in time. He wants you to be seen through you. He wants to be seen through you. He's not trying to make you smaller, erasing you so that there's just less and less and less of you. There's a brand new you that he wants others to see. He doesn't get glorified by making you smaller. He's not impressed by your efforts to make you smaller. He gets glorified by you receiving, trusting, enjoying, and resting in his relationship with you. Trusting him to live through you. That's how he gets magnified. So enough already of us belittling and trying to get rid of ourselves. Jesus is not difficult, and we can let go of being difficult. This is part of what trusting him looks like, believing and living that out. He has made new creatures, and that is how he interacts with us. He wants the world to see him by seeing and allowing him to live through us, his beloved and brand new creatures. Blessings, Tom. I like that a lot, Cole. And we were talking a little bit how this was one of Doc's, let's say, last devotionals.
This was
the last devotional he gave us. And I read that, and immediately what I'm drawn to is a uncanny thing that Doc had to do, and something that I really appreciate about Doc as a teacher for us, is that he would take a commonly held idea. He would say, okay, you probably believe this. There's a lot of Christians who believe this. This is the natural feel of this. And he would say, that's not biblical. But he doesn't stop there. He'd show you verses and the story, put in context, and tell you why. And it made sense. Like, I thought that's just fascinating. He'd do this all the time.
Yeah, he'd kill the sacred cow.
Yeah, really.
He was really good at killing the sacred cow. What's funny about that, though, is that in this devotional, he does not give any Bible verses.
Yeah, that is interesting. Although a few do come to mind, but yeah.
I do know that this is not the first time he's spoken or written about this topic.
Oh, yeah.
He was a psychologist.
Yep.
Right? He was for like 30 years or something like that.
A therapist.
He was
as well.
Yeah. No, he was therapist.
He do counseling.
He wasn't. Yeah. He wasn't a psychiatrist, but he was a psychologist.
Yeah. I think that's right.
And I have to assume that a passion of his was people's mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that you ask, okay, why did he write this devotional? Why did he write most devotionals as a psychologist? Because he sees what hurts people or makes them not grow in a positive way. And I think,
or what lies has the enemy really entrenched in people?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he has to actively tear down the lies that we tell ourselves. And make no mistake, there are many lies that the enemy uses in churches. From the pastor's mouth to speak into the crowd. Not
by malice of like a preacher or anything, but just that like the enemy just has a very, smart way of just infiltrating.
Yeah, I think this is. Oh God, here's a rabbit trail.
Do it.
I have this theory that's not a foolproof theory, but if you're not twice my age, I will not call you pastor.
Interesting.
You don't unless you can prove you've had the life experience to be able to pastor me. You're a guy.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say that's an extreme view.
Well, I think.
But you also have a good point to that.
Is it that extreme?
Well, I think that's kind of a reaction to you'll have a church, and obviously there's an anointing, there's a calling, even for young pastors or something. But I feel like many times the case that people are perhaps not spiritually mature enough for the station that they may be
Yeah,
feeling
I was
called
just about to say,
in
you
that
could be
sense.
called to be a pastor. It doesn't mean you're called to be a pastor right now.
Yeah, and I think that anybody is who in a leadership for church, you can look humbly at that and be like, oh yeah, you should be like God can be preparing you for something.
Why does
And it's
seem
not
like
that conflicts a lot with our probably either our ego or just our like giddiness to jump into something maybe.
I think people conflate a calling and they conflate a calling by God and a sort of like weird entrepreneur bro type.
I know what you mean by that.
In the last like 10 to 15 years, I have seen and met a lot of. It's like, you know what's weird is like, you know what an entrepreneur bro is, right?
Please explain.
Do you know what it is?
Like I have
I
have the idea of it from what I see on social media.
Yeah,
but what do you
so
mean when you
it's
say that?
like supposedly super successful, typically right-leaning men who, if you can, there's a TikToker who always does it. If you can buy 10 houses before you're 30, Joe, and like
I've seen this.
He
before.
applies it to everything, like making fun of those types of people.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
If you can do this, like create your own wealth and be your own boss.
Guruship. Like a guru
yeah.
kind of
And
thing.
they're also all online, as though we need so many of them to know how successful they are, you know. And there's a sort of just, I mean, they are entrepreneurs, right? It's like that sort of. There's a lot of pastors who, before Entrepreneur Bros was a thing, I feel like there was a lot of pastors that
they were already doing it.
They were doing that. They were like. There's so many people that come to mind. I won't say names, but there are people. There are people who see my face, and you know who you are. You know who you are. And the people who were like interns with me at those churches, shout out, Ayo. You know who I'm talking about. You know, where it's like he was a failed thing, and so he decided to be a pastor, and then he was also entrepreneurial in spirit. And I feel like. I lost my train of thought.
Well, you said, you say tech bro? Or what did you say?
Entrepreneur
bro. Yeah.
Oh, anyways, okay, so my point is these entrepreneur bros who, there's like a mix of like, just because there's a calling doesn't mean you can use your entrepreneurial spirit to immediately plant a church and pastor people, right? It's like, maybe that calling means that you should find somebody who's been doing it for a long time and learn first before you just do it. Because entrepreneurs typically, they're, I don't care if this is a bad idea, I'm going to do it anyways. And then if I succeed, I succeed. If I fail, I'll just try it again in a different way. Right? That's typically what an entrepreneur does. And I feel like that's not a good strategy for pastors.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like, you're dealing with people's souls here. You're dealing with people's minds and hearts. Some 25-year-old starting the hip new church. We're a church for people who don't like going to church. You can wear jeans at this church. We have an electric guitar on this church. Stop.
And
the importance of having numbers. Like, they're so driven by more people walk through that door. That means we're growing. If people like what I'm saying, that means we're growing and we're doing God's work. It's like, no, not true. You could be a pastor who struggles to pay the bills and only have 5 people walk through your door every Sunday. And if you're doing exactly what you've been called to do, you're a success. You know what I mean? It's just, but you're not going to have the wisdom to see that if you don't spend time under somebody who can, build you up. And also, that should probably be your first test, which is if you can find somebody that would be a good mentor for you to become a pastor. Sit under a person, not blindly, but discern whether or not they should. I don't even know if I'm using discern correctly. Do you remember that day that Tom tried to explain the difference between discernment and wisdom? God, that was so confusing. I wish we could go back to that conversation because all that made me realize is that me and so many other people do not use discernment correctly.
Interesting. Well,
do you remember that thing?
So, do you want to dive into that right now, or do you want to come back to that
No, I
later?
don't ever want to dive into that.
You don't want to dive into that?
That
We can look it up, we can check it out, but I think that one thing that you're hitting on that definitely gets brought up in the Devo.
Young pastors suck. That's what I'm getting at. If you're young and you call yourself a pastor, I don't call you. No, that's not what I'm thinking. So,
there's certainly something you touch on that where, because this Devo talks about is the humility, and I'd say specifically false humility that we sometimes ascribe to, like, and we look to this false humility like I am very spiritual for having this, and this Devo hits that right on the head.
Yeah.
And in the phrase where we will say this, but I'd say the biblical context sure helps a lot. That we take the words from John the Baptist, I must become less, he must become more.
mm-hmm.
John the Baptist saying, I must become less as John the Baptist, and Jesus needs to become more.
Mm-hmm.
And we take that as a spiritual mantra. And what Doc is saying here is that, well, that's not necessarily what Christ means.
Well,
to be working in our life.
That's not your calling.
That's not your specific calling. That was one person, John the Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be improper to ascribe that to everybody, but to yourself, even as you're reading that. And I found that really interesting. I don't know if that ruffles your feathers at all, but when I first heard that, I'm like, I perked up on my seat. Like, I got to the edge of my seat because I was like, what's going on here that I'm not fully understanding?
Are you trying to hear you always belittling yourself every day?
Well, no, but like, I've definitely felt the pressure to become less in my life and have Christ be more. Like, that language, like,
less
definitely.
Of me, more
less of me, more of Christ. I must, like, be less me, but just be more Jesus. And, like, that's something that this definitely takes a big shovel and churns up for me spiritually, I think.
Yeah, you know what this does? Yeah,
definitely.
No, I need to look at
it.
Okay. I was just kind of keeping this so that. Do you want me to put this?
No, we'll keep it up. That's all good. Yeah.
I'm gonna completely derail what you were just saying, and I'm sorry, but
go for it.
Okay, so if that was just for John the Baptist, something that's more commonly talked about as being, was it just for them or was it a calling for all people, which is known as the Great Commission?
Well,
is that meant for all people, or was it meant for the 12?
I think it would be important to dive into exactly what Scripture says of that, and then also seeing the context of that. But we do think of it as something that is ascribed to all of us, like as Christians, the Great Commission, and hey, go.
What do you mean when you say we? Because I am probably on the other camp.
Yeah, interesting. So just describe.
There are some people who should experience Jesus, but they probably shouldn't talk about him much. They're just not good at it. I honestly believe that. I think there are some people where it's like, I'm glad you love Jesus, and I'm glad you know he dwells within you. And I'm really glad that you don't talk about it much to a lot of people, because this would not be good.
Well, but then I'd say on the same hand, it's like, hey, you never know what speaks to somebody, I guess, right? Or that's does fall into the thing of, again, I'd say, if you're like looking to share Christ and stuff, what sort of perspective and mindset are you coming into it with? And I think a lot of times it is coming with a wrong perspective of how God wants to use you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the Devo really nails that on the head when it's saying that that he's living his life in this world through us. Mm-hmm. And like we talk, and let's unpack this right here, where a big theme that in the realm of God working through us, that Doc would use a lot, is the metaphor being the glove.
Being the glove.
Being the glove.
Okay, explain what it means.
So for being the glove, it is, you are a glove. You can be just sitting there on a table. You're a glove. You can't really move. You can't do too much. You're just kind of hanging out there.
You can't move at all.
Can't move at all. It's not even in your ability.
Yeah.
But the way is that we work through the world or the way that God chooses to work through the world is by being the hand. He puts us on like the glove, and you just see people do amazing.
Wait, did you say the reason the
way God works? One of the ways that God works through us is by, hey, He puts the glove on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, put any story where you've seen God show up in your life, or when you've, felt like, hey, God's really using me right now, or God's anything like that. And I think if you feel passion in something that you're doing that's worthwhile, it's definitely there. And that's you being the glove in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful because oftentimes people think being efficient means you're being used by God, but maybe that's not the case. But anyways, the point to the glove thing is that the glove doesn't actually do the work. It is the hand that's doing the work. The glove just needs to rest in the fact that that's what's happening, or abide, right, is the way the Bible would say it, is we just need to abide in Him and allow Him to work through us and not have to figure out what He wants us to do, because what He wants us to do is just let Him do the work.
Rest in Him.
Rest in
You're
Him.
you're the glove.
You're the glove. You're the glove, baby.
And I think that
some of us are winter gloves. Some of us are combat gloves.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us are driving gloves. Some of us are those rubber dishwashing gloves. Some of us are the doctor gloves. But nonetheless, we're all just a glove.
We're gloves. And I
the glove
see
don't do jack. It's the hand that does the work.
And I see that really at play here in the sense of that God wants to use you by being the new creation that you are in Him. Mm-hmm. Not just that, oh, hey, I just need to be less of myself. But the truth is that the old you has died.
Mm-hmm.
That the old's gone and the new creation is here. And when you make Jesus your leader and forgiver, you've accepted Christ. There's a heart transplant that goes on there.
Yeah, He doesn't want to see less of that.
No.
He wants to see more of that.
Exactly. And that's, call that sanctification.
It's kind of it ties in with the last devotional we talked about, which are not in order, by the way. We're not reading these in order. Wanting to be face to face with the Father, or the Father wanting to be face to face with you. He enjoys you.
Yeah.
He wants to see more of you. He wants to see the Son manifest in you, and it's not like this weird sort of, Protestant idea of He's pleased with you, not because He's pleased with you, but because He's pleased with Jesus. No. Mm-hmm. He's pleased with you because He is pleased with you. He's always been pleased with you. It is Jesus' death and resurrection.
You just needed to be, bought and purchased by the blood of Christ, so this can happen.
So yes, that's biblical. But the point being is that He did that so that you would know that He's pleased with you, right? Because even before the cross, He was pleased with you. It's just not until the cross occurs that you then can be awoken to the understanding that, oh, He is pleased in me. That's when we snap into it and we're like, oh, I like this Jesus guy, and we realize we're going to start believing in Him. That's when we start to really understand, oh, God likes me. Not only that, He loves me. He wants to be face to face with me. And He wants to see more of me. He is pleased.
And He made you, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, this just clicks with me a lot because, I have little kids, right? And I just remember holding one of my children right after they're born.
Yeah.
And you just have that sense of
which one?
Possibilities.
The favorite one?
Favorite one, actually, it was two at a time. It was both Xander and Nora.
Oh, okay.
I had twins for my first kiddos. So
which one did you like more?
Xander, Nora. Which one did I like more?
It was a Xander. Did you like Xander?
Actually, both of my kids, they are both specifically as twins. It's funny how They have a very different spirit about them.
Sit on that fence post, baby.
I would say right when they were born, Nora took a bit more care because she had trouble eating. So I feel like we were holding Nora a lot more.
So
But
she was it was kind of a nuisance. You
like
like Xander more? He was less of a problem in the beginning.
It was also funny. Xander just had he was a little old man when he was first born. He's just a little grumpy old man face. It was so fun. So he's so cute. But I just remember holding these kids, and I just remember the just sense of just like possibility. It's like God just like makes you as a being, and just like puts all these like boxes on like the shelf of your life, and like is just like waiting with joy to just open those up and see them like come to fruition in your life.
Yeah.
And like so that like sense of possibility, I'm sure is just something that he's just like so pumped for you, even like shoot as you, Cole, like, or as someone out there, even if you're younger or older, like what you're gonna be, how he's gonna reveal himself to you next, and kind of that next stage of life, or the next sort of say I don't know, revelation's probably not the right word, but just in the next like understanding that you have that really brings your relationship with Christ to like another level, like something like that. And he just waits for that, and with excitement. Here's another. I'm yawning. Good one.
Sorry. Too many beers in the beginning. This is another off-topic thing. Yeah, never mind. We'll move back. That's just going to completely derail what we're talking about.
But what's something else that kind of stands out to you after reading through that, and even kind of just skimming over?
I'm trying to remember what Tom and I were talking about at the time that we were having the meeting, because the last conversation I had with him, we were talking about how a specific problem in the church today feels kind of like the problem that Athanasius had with the church.
Elaborate. So what problem did Athanasius have with the church?
So at one point in church history, majority of the church did not believe Jesus was divine.
Interesting. Okay.
They believed that he was a created being. And Athanasius was like, no, fuck you, that's not
right.
That's not right. Like, to that level, he was like, no, and I mean, freaking Santa Claus punched, what's his nuts?
Santa Claus? Hold on, back up, Santa Claus?
Yeah,
like Saint Nicholas?
Saint Nick. Saint Nick, I believe they arrested him. But
who's actually awesome, by the way. Like, we lie to our children and say that Santa Claus is something. You don't have to. Don't feel the pressure to. I don't want to. I'll tell my kids about the real Saint Nicholas because he's pretty freaking cool.
He's way better.
He's pretty dang cool. Like,
better.
Saving kids from, like, trafficking cool. Like, that's what
he did a lot of. What the heck was it's Arianism.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, it was Irenaeus.
Okay, yeah, alright.
He punched him. Saint Nick punched him, right? He got so pissed.
So what did Irenaeus, what was he saying? What was he espousing to drive Santa Claus?
Jesus was not God and a created being.
Okay, alright.
And Santa was like, fuck you, man. And he just popped him right in the beak, dude. Right in a church council. So for all the freaking...
That's quite a church meeting.
Yeah, for all the freaking... And these guys were like, what, 2nd century bishops and teachers, and they're just swinging on each other. And you could say, like, oh, it's back then, and it's not very, like... We're more educated, and
which was barbaric.
It's like what's that called? Chronological snobbery.
Yeah,
just because
exactly
it was so long ago, they're less civilized. It's like, I don't know. It seems like the closer you were from the origin of our faith, the more better you have an understanding of how the faith can operate. And we got people like Saint Nicholas, who are literally saints, and you just cold cock somebody for saying Jesus was not God.
I don't see that as a requirement to become a saint.
I
Did
think
you or
it
did you not throw a nice right
is
hook?
absolutely required. If you're not busted.
I know you did a few miracles here, but I see that you have not gotten in a proper fist fight.
Yeah, he's not busting a dude in the mouth for saying something dumb. You know, it's like they should get rid of the whole. Any sort of physical combat is illegal. It's like everyone should be allowed one swift punch to the mouth. People would be much more polite to each other. Could you imagine? Like, what if you were allowed one punch? If you were allowed one punch for somebody's smart mouth comment,
It would make me think twice.
oh yeah,
sometimes,
for sure. Anybody would be like, especially like a bigger dude or whatnot, or you're like, you're not allowed to retaliate just from that one punch. Right? It'd be a weird life, but it would be so amazing.
In a world where
just giving somebody just a quick bop to the face. Every customer.
rewinding this back though.
Sorry.
From what you're saying, that's super fun.
I could go on a huge rabbit trail of fantasizing about every customer. Just get one sock off from me every day. And it'd be totally legal, and it would feel so good.
What's that about the customer being always right? Oh yeah, he's not.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, that was a bad rabbit trail.
That was sure fun. I enjoyed it.
No, so Saint. Yeah, what were we talking about?
Oh yeah,
So the problem with the church today is that there's a similar problem in like
Back then.
Irenaeus. It was a very small. It was actually a very minority. It's a minority view that Jesus was God.
Okay. Yeah.
And
they're still developing the ideas of the Trinity and making
yeah.
this all like more normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Arianism was
Developed.
rampant. Arianism was rampant. Athanasius was telling everyone to F off because I probably should say F off rather than the actual word so you don't have to bleep it later. But
He thinks I'm gonna bleep it.
okay, so I didn't know. So there's something similar going on in today's church where it's like a very small group of Christians get what's going on here, and then the rest of them don't realize they're actually teaching a form of a heresy, of like a half gospel.
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember Nick's sermon, like where he talked about there was like a 3/4 gospel, half gospel, whole gospel?
This was our friend.
Yeah.
This is our friend Nick Cantor. You should watch these, man. We're having fun here.
We should
It's
post
good
them.
stuff.
Nick will watch these.
Nick
We should bring him on.
Nick will enjoy these.
I was talking to him today about being like our resident expert.
Oh, fun.
And he says, I don't know about expert. And I said, yeah, that's true. And I said, we'll put a disclaimer in that you're the expert and that you just know the most out of the three of us when it comes to like Jewish history and things like that. And he's like, that'll work. I'll feel
But
better.
what Nick was saying in this specific sense, what he was talking about.
Yeah, so God, you'd have to go back and watch the sermon. It was so good. But what's funny is it's like he tells me what happened after he gave the sermon, and it's a church where there was a pastor of it for so many years, going for so long. Like there were people going to a church for so long, listening to the same pastor over and over and over again. And after Nick gave his sermon, those people are coming up to Nick going, "Oh my God, I have never heard this before. This is this is good news. What you're saying, I've never heard this before." And it's like, you haven't heard the freaking gospel in church? It's like, but that problem is like rampant across the church because you hear the stuff that was coming from the church and you're like, that same BS that's coming off of that stage, you watch this church, you go to this church, you go to this church, you go to this church. It's all lip service to the fact that it's, of what the gospel is, but then it's followed up by, now here's what you need to do, BS. And it's like, no. It really is, he set the captives free. He resolved the sins. There's nothing more to be done.
And I do think something that doesn't get enough, mentioned enough, is that, like, because we mentioned the resting in Him to do the work. Like, we say, like, oh yeah, all by grace, right? This is all Jesus doing this. But then we immediately totally just say, okay, now here's what I must do, and give a list like that.
Yeah.
Right? Or it feels like that when Christ says, hey, my yoke is easy. He says, rest in me. Like, and I feel like that's just not talked about as much.
My yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that. If you're getting bogged down as a Christian, there is something wrong. But what's wrong is that you're believing lies about who Jesus is and how God views you. Because you're getting bogged down by your own expectations.
And this is where Doc, I feel, would just look you straight in the eyes and he'd say, God actually loves you.
Yeah.
Like,
he's not impressed by anything you can't accomplish, or he's not impressed by anything you've accomplished, but he's also, that's a bad way of saying it. He would say God's not surprised. He's never surprised. Whether you did good or bad, he's not surprised, right? He's always perfectly pleased with you forever, not surprised by anything. Your troubles you're going through, he's not surprised by it. He knows it's going on. He's fully aware. You know, you did that great stuff. That he's happy for you. Doesn't mean that you're any closer or better of a person, closer to God or better of a person. You know, it's, you know.
And I'd say to talk more intelligently about that. And I think it also, it's helpful to frame it in the sense of we hear the good news, we accept Christ, and we immediately like there's a straight and narrow path of this. But what just kind of our humanness, I guess,
the straight and narrow path
leads us.
Jesus.
Yeah, we'll either fall into legalism, right? That's the this checklist of things I need to do to somehow attain righteousness. You know, that's the legalism. Jesus comes and makes fun of the Pharisees for this, right? Like, you have all these rules and stuff, but then we could also go to the other side of just lawlessness, where it's like, Christ did this, but no, this doesn't affect my life at all. Like, you know, or just like, oh yeah, or perpetuate another heresy where they say, like, and Paul talks about it, where he says, you know, the grace of God doesn't mean like a sin-free pass or show that God's power is greater, so just go sin all the more to show God's glory. Like, Paul talks against that, and it sounds so silly when you hear that, but like that's in vogue right now.
There's a that side of it, the lawlessness side you were saying.
But I'm saying that we will tend to lean away or go off into the ditch either way.
Yes. So to make when Paul says, if that's what you think, then you're not a believer. It's because
Paul don't care. Paul puts people on blast. Yeah. And I love it.
What's funny about that is that, like, there's a difference between. Well, he says that because it's very obvious that people do. I don't want to say something and then get in trouble because I'm going to say something but then mean something different. But I don't know. It may not be immediate, but people do change when they become Christians. Life doesn't get. I'm not saying life gets easier. Or that you feel better, you know what I mean? But when it hits you and you start to grow in it, things start to change. They physically, life does become different over time. I think that you can say that objectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's got to be
something. Doesn't mean your circumstances get better. But do you know what I mean by that?
But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when that inward change starts manifesting itself in your life.
Outwardly, right? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. It just sometimes it may take time. Like, it's not like an overnight thing where everything's all better all of a sudden. And it may not be the fact that your circumstances will ever get better, but when you really spend the time to meditate on the realities of Christ, your views on those circumstances change, which then eventually does make things better,
Mm.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can still die of cancer, but having the knowledge of Christ in that experience is a hell of a lot easier of an experience than having no hope at all.
Oh, and
You know.
and I'd say just on a even like.
Is that a crazy thing to say? Am I saying some crazy stuff right now?
Well, I think it is kind of crazy to like somebody who's a non-believer. Well, it's weird. So I think we shy away from this a bit, where it's like, as a Christian, you believe some crazy things. You're like, hey, you believe a man died and came back to life, and he's God. But one thing you believe as a Christian is that your heart desires, like to think that you're a new creation, is a crazy thing to believe.
Weird.
That's a crazy thing to believe. You should.
What changed?
Like if you're a non-Christian, I feel like your criticism could easily be like, you're literally saying you're a new creature. You don't. Your hands aren't different. You look the exact same to me.
You're still an asshole.
Right? Yeah. Right. New creation. I don't think so. But you're a new creation in that sense. Where it's like,
but I know Jesus loves me, and you think I'm an asshole. So.
Well, and way I've heard it described before too is like, hey, when you accept Christ, like there's literal like heart transplant that's happening there, but it's not. Doesn't say there's a brain transplant, so it's not like
It says you need to work on changing your mind,
renewing your mind.
Yeah.
Like that's sanctification. That's like maybe the whole purpose of this life is to like have those heart desires be just brought through. And the weird thing about your brain too, and I love how it's one of those things where like neuroscience and things sort of just catch up with like a psychological understanding of the Bible, right? Where it's like, you grow up and you have all these neuron pathways or things that the ways you think. The
science is always trying to catch up with the Bible,
which is super cool. I love it, but like you have this whole framework of the way that you live your life, and then tell me if you've experienced this as a Christian. You somehow you have this experience, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. Like you kind of become conscious of what you're thinking in that sense, where it's like, hey, my heart is giving this sort of desire that's coming through here, and I gotta kind of rearrange my brain pathways to make up for this. Because I actually, maybe I don't. To use your example before, I'm less of a douchebag now because I actually maybe feel some love for humanity, or I actually want to like you have some desire to be the glove. Like I want God to work through me in this situation, and that's a crazy thing to think. That's a crazy thing to think, and it's a beautiful thing to think.
Put the caveat in that becoming a Christian and understanding that it is He who's going to do the good work in you and complete the good work is when you start to actually see the change. It's not, I believe in Jesus now, and then all of a sudden things are better. You do need to do what Scripture says, which is rethink how you see the world, rethink how you see yourself, rethink how God operates with you and within the world, like how we're talking about, so that then those correct thoughts can manifest.
Yeah.
Not saying so a man thinks so he is, because that's actually not even in the Bible, which is kind of funny.
Interestingly
it's
enough.
in the King James Bible, but in every other translation, it is not translated that way, I believe, which is kind of funny. But I think when you start to actually apply the belief that He is the one doing the work in you and you just need to allow Him to do His thing, is when things start to improve. I also want to put a disclaimer that I can completely disagree with everything I'm saying tomorrow. I'm not married to my ideas. I mean, I when I believe something, I'll defend it, because, why believe it if you're not going to defend it? But my mind can be changed. So
you're saying that you're like actually capable of being intellectually honest?
I don't think that's what I said, but if that's what you heard me say, I'll take it. I thought I was just giving myself an out for when someone proves me wrong.
So we talked about conversion experience and that in a little bit. So drawing that back to John the Baptist, this guy dunked people, like John the Baptizer. And I gotta wonder how many people, like, what John the Baptist was spent just like saying to these people, because this man would draw crowds. This dude would come out of the woods.
He pissed off a lot of people.
Oh yeah, this guy coming out of the woods in his crazy hide outfit, eating bugs and honey, like, I don't know how we'd react to John the Baptist today, but it would probably be similar to where other people were like, "What's this guy doing?"
You say eating bugs and honey like you wouldn't or haven't tried that. Tell me, would you do it?
Well, I guess I have eaten bugs and I have eaten honey before. So,
Okay, yeah.
So ergo,
really
I'm John the
weird.
Baptist.
That's not that weird. Was that
But,
seen
well,
as weird at the time? Big question for Nick.
Different, I guess,
Okay.
compared to the people of the day. Like, it wasn't a normal cuisine. Enough to point out, I guess.
I guess, yeah, why not? It's true.
But, so this guy would...
But he wore camel, too, right? Is that what it says? It was a camel skin clothing?
I don't know exactly the type of... But he come on with these fur kind of attire.
It's like he wore weird stuff and he ate weird stuff. Trying to say he's a weird guy.
Interesting fellow. And he come out here and he start preaching like he's saying that the chosen one's coming. He's coming. The person you guys have all been waiting for.
My cousin.
He's coming. And after doing this, people hear this. They get super excited. You know, people are getting baptized and like preparing themselves for this. And then all of a sudden, Jesus does come. And contextually, then we're kind of diving into what, you know, biblically we read this and what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Is the context to this is where John has baptized Jesus.
Yeah.
And this is after this, and this is clearly a transition between John's ministry here to Jesus' coming ministry.
Yep. I must decrease, so he must increase.
Yeah.
That has to mean he probably had a hell of a following.
For sure. Like, this guy was making a lot of noise.
He was
this
probably
guy
pissing
This guy
off.
was trending. This guy was viral.
He was pissing off the Pharisees far before Jesus was.
True. I'm sure. Well, not just the fact of the things he was saying, but the fact that the Pharisees weren't saying that. They were envious of his ministry. They were envious of seeing the crowds this guy was gathering.
Yeah, they were just pissed because he had bigger numbers.
There it is again.
Just like pastors do today.
Oddly enough.
Right? They
Interesting.
get pissed
I'm not
because
saying
other
I'm just
pastors
saying.
that they don't agree with or like have bigger numbers than them.
But
Tell me they don't.
So that's John the Baptist here.
Tell me they don't do that.
But as it's valid. But like the reason I mentioned that is to give context to what we read biblically there.
Yeah.
We read biblically there, and I find it's kind of weird. I think it probably is common in like our zeitgeist of Christian understanding today. This idea of I must decrease, so he must increase, because it sounds so spiritually like enlightened.
Well, John said it, so it
John,
must be.
and the Bible says it, so take it and run with it. But like, I think it's important that, as Tom does here, to point out and be like, you know what, this, like, not only is this not saying what you think it's saying in the Bible here, you're missing, and this being the more important part, you're missing the true sense of what, because it makes you feel like it puts a divide between you and God in a spot where it shouldn't. And whereas you may feel like, okay, God doesn't want, like, I need to become less. God doesn't want to use these things in me. Like, these things are like things that make...
It's literally just doing exactly what the enemy wants you to do.
Yeah, right? Like, that's totally...
You think you're being
open.
pious, but really you're just worshiping the devil.
So tell me,
basically.
so tell me if this connects or not. Yes, but tell me if this connects or not, because I feel like it seemed very vivid in my mind. Like when you're talking about the armor of God, right? You know, you got your shield of faith, you got your helmet of salvation, your boots of peace, your breastplate of righteousness, your sword of the word, and your belt of truth, all that stuff, right?
What's the cup?
What's the cup?
Yeah.
Oh, the cup? I feel like that's probably part of the belt of truth, I bet.
Okay.
But like, I don't know. It's an accessory. It's an accessory of the armor of God. But all right. So now I need to look it up. I'm sure knight armor I'm sure there's a name for that. But yeah, something like that. But when we do that, when we sort of take the parts that God has created us with, and you demean them in a, I'd say, falsely humble sense. Like, just to say, like, oh, yeah, hey, I'm not that great at that, or, you know, I'm not, like...
Most of the time, people are lying to themselves when they act that way, too. It's like, you don't actually believe that. like.
Yeah. It's a
You know what
false
I mean?
humility.
It's
and you feel it. You
and-
take.
yeah.
You smell it, and it's kind of like, ooh.
Who
it's
are you
slimy.
trying to deceive? Because
Yeah.
he knows that's like it's God. God knows when you're being
Yeah,
full
right.
of shit.
Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting because you said it's from like the enemy perspective. It's the equivalent of taking off your helmet, man. Like you're taking that helmet of salvation. You're taking all those things that that God created with and wants to use in you. You're taking the helmet off, and getting headshot by something's not a good thing. Like
Jeez.
so like I feel like that's something that like sneakily, really stealthy, has snuck in to like our modern like I need a better word for it, but just like our common Christian sort of vibe of this idea, especially.
Yeah. Do you know where this crap kind of comes from?
Ooh, tell us, John.
Who's John? I feel like
the Baptist. You're John. The
Oh
Baptist.
yeah. I get it now. You've heard this sermon more than once from different stages,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. All right. What sermon?
Well, just the whole the example he gives where he says what commonly prayed or talked about thing from churches or pastors, right? The whole I must decrease and he must increase that was taught. That among many other things, and it's like we were actually talking about this on the phone the other day.
Ooh. Yeah. Okay.
When I was like 12 tequilas in, is it's a traditional thing that's taught, but it's unbiblical. The irony.
Have you ever heard the phrase that bad theology is never destroyed; it's only recycled? Like that's the idea there, where it's just kind of passed on. Where it's like
what I'm saying, the irony is that this is a common Protestant or evangelical teaching. There's a tradition of this being taught, and it's very unbiblical. So from the camp that considers itself biblically centered, but then teaches bullshit like this that is only comes from the tradition.
And I want you to nail it down specifically. What is just puts out your BS meter for this idea? Like you hear this from the stage, and pinpoint what exactly is this saying that is so bad?
Like it's everything we've been saying.
Yeah. Because like I hear that, and I hear someone saying, "Oh, hey, they say this, but like it's a good sentiment. Like, okay, like what's so bad about it?" And what I say is, what's so bad about it is, hey, we're taking a verse out of context here, which is one thing. But the bigger thing that it's missing here is that it's creating a sort of a false humility.
It's okay,
and it's also kind of demeaning the image of God.
Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying, I agree with all that. But I feel like it's. What I'm saying is it's kind of funny that things like this are traditionally taught, but and it's coming from the camp that's anti-tradition in its ways of doing things.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it actually has more traditions and less biblical being biblically centered, right? It's like a lot of evangelicals will knock on the Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox for being so dependent on their traditions because they're biblically minded, and if there's no biblical argument for it, then they're not going to do it.
Oh, with it. Okay.
But it ends up turning out to be like they're spewing out crap like this, which is actually hyper traditional within their sphere of existence and very anti-biblical. And oftentimes the Catholic and the Orthodox Church will do things that, from a traditional perspective, but have good basis from the Bible as well as
you were driving, you fell right into that ditch of what was to be legalism, right? Yeah. That's dude, I think that's a pretty insightful thing to point out.
It's hilarious. There are so many. That's what a lot of the cows that Tom slaughtered that were sacred were things that were traditional in Protestantism or evangelicalism.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that this week about how it's like there's actually, for wanting to be so anti-traditional.
You're sure traditional. You wanted to go, so this being the pendulum swing, right? You wanted to be non-traditional so bad you swung all the way back around and you made it there.
You have so many traditions. Or the idea, this is so off topic, but the idea of hell is like Gehenna. What's Gehenna? It was a trash, fiery heap outside of Jerusalem or Or
Yeah.
That's, I don't believe, verifiably factual. That's just something that a pastor
Worth
said.
looking up.
Yeah, I mean, fact check me, but I don't think that actually was a thing. That's just something one pastor said, that another pastor said, that another pastor said. It's bullshit.
It creates its own tradition.
It's tradition. Yeah. It's something that is A, not biblical, even though they want to be biblically centered, and then B, it's traditionally taught, but yet they're anti-tradition. It's like, what the hell, man? Let's chat GPT.
Ooh. Chat GPT, ask the internet. What are you going to ask it?
What was... I spell Gehenna.
Gehenna. I'm going to guess Gehena. Gehenna? Spelling, maybe? Did I get it right?
Yeah, well, no.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, let's see. It says Gehenna, sometimes spelled Gehenna, is a term with origins in ancient Jewish and Christian tradition. It originally referred to a valley outside Jerusalem called the Valley of Hinnom. In ancient times, this valley was associated with the worship of deities like Molech, where children were sacrificed where child sacrifices were allegedly made. Over time, the Valley of Hinnom came to symbolize an associated punishment and destruction. By the time of the New Testament, it had become a metaphor for a place of eternal damnation or hell in Christian theology. In this context, Gehenna is used to describe a state of suffering or a place of final judgment. In Jewish thought, Gehenna is sometimes viewed as a place where souls are purified rather than eternally damned, reflecting a different perspective compared to the more traditional Christian concept of hell, which I would agree with. But what I was getting to is how they would say it was like a fiery trash heap.
Okay.
What
Chat GPT being utilized.
Yeah, and
we'll see what we get. Which Chat GPT is this, might I add? Oh, this is just the Chat GPT. This is not a... Alright. What did it give you?
It just repeated it.
So. Okay, because I would say that there's definitely some like cultural separation between us trying to understand this and for what people hearing this during the time, like what will come to mind for that. But so there's definitely that like layer of cultural difference and understanding. Oh, that's giving you a lot. Did you ask it for answers for all the questions?
In ancient context, the valley was known for its association with children sacrifices and other forms of worship practices that were condemned in the Hebrew Bible. By the time of the Roman period, the valley has developed a reputation for being a place of desecration, and was sometimes used as a refuse dump. Archaeological and historical resources indicate that later centuries, particularly during the Byzantine and the medieval period, parts of the Valley of Hinnom were used as a garbage dump. So at the time of Jesus, not a garbage dump. It wasn't until like years and years and years and years later. So I guess
after hearing that and not looking into it any further, it seems like someone like researched this, saw this, but like did take into account the time frame of when this was
kind of like a confirmation bias.
Oh,
they
okay.
They just ran with it.
Understandable. We do that all the time. Like, but but then it seeps its way into like you're hearing it, said through church.
So while the valley was not originally designed as a trash pit, it did come to be used as a waste disposal at certain points in history, contributing to its negative connotations. So there's that. So I'm half right, but point still remains.
Yeah.
That's not what Jesus was referring to, because they say Jesus referred to it as like, because this is where they had fire and they burned trash and stuff, and so that's the image of hell. And it's like, no, hold the phone.
Hold up.
If that's not what was happening at that time of Jesus, First of all, I don't think that they actually did child sacrifice at that time. Did they do child sacrifice? They could have.
Child sacrifice is unfortunately comes up quite a bit throughout history.
Right.
So I'm sure.
But I'm wondering if I don't think they would have allowed, I don't think the Romans or the Jews would have allowed that to be going on at the time. Was it?
That'd be worth something diving into.
That's something for ChatGPT to look into again.
I
to do it again.
We're going to put out a list for
I could go on forever.
But going back to something from our... can you hit me back to the Devo here?
Yeah, the tab there.
Nice, all right. So, and I remember Doc talking about this a little bit more too. So going back to one of the latter chapters in there. Latter paragraphs.
Someone's going to go, see, it was a trash pit. Blah, 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 blah.
I hope someone does. If someone puts some time to put some good research into that, I'm totally down to hear it.
I don't think that the way it's been taught historically in church.
Cole will personally give you internet points if you do that.
I will.
But for this paragraph, he made you uniquely. He wants there to be you in this planet, in your neighborhood, in this moment in time. And he wants to be seen through you. So through you there, he wants to be seen. The glove, right? That's the imagery I hear there. He is not trying to make you smaller or erasing you so that there's less and less and less of you. But there's a brand new you that he wants others to see, that new creation. He doesn't get glorified by making you smaller. He's not impressed by your efforts to make yourself smaller. He gets glorified by you receiving, trusting, enjoying, and resting in his relationship with you. Trusting him to live through you. That's how he gets magnified. So enough already with us belittling and trying to get rid of ourselves. Like I love that, but I remember Doc talking specifically when he was mentioning this part, and it stuck with me. Is this brand new you? Like he doesn't want to just like. It's like a false idea that we have that we just like little. No, you don't get it. Like you're a brand new you. Like, you need to understand that first. It's not like you're just, like, erasing yourself, like, building back better. There's some sort of, like, little substitution that's happening here. There's a brand new you. And honestly exploring that through Christ's relationship. And that's something that God gets glorified by that. Like, God doesn't just get glorified in the sense of like, oh, hey, I'm becoming just less and less and less. He gets glorified by, well, specifically right here, he gets glorified by you receiving, your words, trusting, enjoying, and resting in his relationship. You know what words I don't see there? In you achieving, succeeding, making, doing. Those aren't the words used there. Like, and that's sort of, I hear that, my knee-jerk is like, okay, come on, I got to be doing something here. I need to be, like, succeeding in this sense.
This goes back to Jesus talking about, I always get him confused. Are we the vine or are we the branch?
Jesus is the true vine. We are the branches.
We are the branch, right? It goes to that, right? So, Jesus is the vine, the true vine, right? The Father, like, first of all, even Jesus himself says, when he was on earth, excuse me.
Good one.
Thank you. When Jesus was on earth, he does nothing. The Father does it. He on earth was the.
He was exemplifying this idea.
He was the one who lived this out perfectly by allowing the Father's works to manifest through him. No fruit while Jesus was on earth was produced by Jesus. The fruit was produced by the Spirit. By Father, by God, and then it manifested in Jesus' life by Jesus being the glove for the Father.
He'd say, my Father does these things.
My Father does these things. It is not I. And now that he is, we're Christians, so we think Jesus is God, and so it is Jesus now who lives through us. It's no longer I who lives, but him who lives in me. We don't produce shit. Right? It is him.
Sometimes we do. It's not good.
Right. It is him who produces the fruit. We are the ones that are to abide and enjoy the fruit that is manifest through his works, not our own. And when you can master that, you basically got Christianity down. Nothing else matters, I feel. I mean, there's a lot of other interesting things to talk about, but that is what is most important in life, is resting.
Again.
That's what it means to rest.
Sorry if this offends you, as Doc says. Christ, he isn't difficult. Life can be difficult. It's not difficult. We try to make it difficult.
Yeah, life is not hard, or life is hard. Jesus is not. Jesus says, "I am the true vine." That's it.
And mic drop. Right. No, that's like it kind of comes right back around into itself. I love it.
Yeah.
But it's just like we're trying to figure out and perform what would please Him. But it's because that's where my mind goes. Like, I think that nails it on the head. But no,
you can't disappoint Him.
Well, and on top of that, like, we're missing out on that joy and that rest.
Yeah.
That comes from that. Like, what do I want? Hey, I want joy and rest. Like
the Zoe life.
Unpack that.
I forget what language it is, but ChatGPT. I don't know, what does it mean for Zoe life?
Hit it.
Okay.
But it's like, hey, I want the joy. I want that joy. I want that rest. Like, I'll insert that metaphorical treadmill.
Okay, so it's Greek, right?
It's Greek?
So
okay.
the Greek word Zoe means life or living. In Christian theology, particularly within the context of the New Testament writing, Zoe is often used to refer to a special kind of life that is more than just physical existence. Here's a breakdown of what Zoe life typically refers to: eternal life, abundant life, spiritual vitality.
The Zoe life.
The Zoe life,
okay.
The good life.
Yeah.
The correct life, right?
Greek words nail it sometimes.
The Greeks. They also make a good gyro.
Also true. I had a delicious one.
They also
went
make
to
a good
the county fair this year.
Do you remember when Dylan was here and I was training to do my fight and not eating?
So you were training for jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, and you guys
tournament?
Yeah, and you guys made those. Or you guys
that'd be rough. So this guy's
those good?
This guy's training for like
were they good?
Weeks, months for a jiu-jitsu tournament. And
the sad part is I didn't even get to do it because everything that came about with my business, so I had to stop.
Oh yeah. So but at this point you're like on a very strict diet, right?
Yeah.
You're on a very strict diet to say the least.
I was cutting to compete at the 180 division.
And he's not naturally that way,
no,
right?
Not even close.
Not
even close.
So we're hungry. We order this food. We get these like absolutely delicious gyros.
Like midnight,
and they're so good too. And you're just like kind of staring at them.
It's just
like,
can I smell that? Was I smelling your gyro?
And I have to like kind of feel like I almost have to.
I know it's a ghetto.
I feel like I almost have to lie to you and be like, "No, this isn't very good."
You were saying, was it good? You were saying
so good. It was so good. Come on.
I believed you when you said it was good. Like, oh, that's good. And Max is just in there, just smashing it into his face. It seems like it's really good. You ate it really fast, but it smelled so good.
So we'll have to get that sometime.
Yeah, we will have to. Well, yeah, I need to start training again. Good times. We got to bring Dylan back here.
True.
Would Dylan be good? He always has a good take.
Yeah. No.
What is Dylan? Is he an atheist?
We have a friend who's probably would identify as agnostic. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I'd be curious of his like thought on things because I'd say he's a very just kind of honest guy.
Yeah.
So he even if he disagreed with something, he let us know like in a very rational way. And he has good points sometimes. I especially like his perspective on ways that we are just silly and weird. Where he'd be the first to point out, like, hey, why do you believe that? Or ask the question, why do you believe that?
Yeah.
Or, if you're having that conversation with someone else, they might just kind of have blinders on because they've just sort of just blindly accepted that and maybe not put that much thought into it, whereas he has. So, yeah, it's usually good. But, yeah,
Dylan, you suck.
Dylan, someday, someday, I hope Christ gets a hold of you in the same way that he did me.
Well, now we can't send him the podcast.
Why not?
We said that weird thing.
Well, what
What do you
I'm
mean?
kidding.
Oh, okay, all right. I guess.
He knows how weird we are.
But yeah, so Cole, this has been really good. Like, I feel like diving into this, the important points of that kind of false humility, our misconception around the phrase "I must be less and he must become more." I think we nailed that pretty hard.
For me, the biggest takeaway of this devotional is the last conversation I had with Tom, and that is the whole Athanasius and Arianism thing.
How
and
the same thing's happening in church today.
Where pretty much almost every church doesn't realize they're actually teaching a heresy. And it's fine. I mean, all of the New Testament was formed out of churches that were heretics. I mean, every church was Tom writing about why they're a bunch of freaks. I mean, stop sleeping with your moms. It's like,
Paul.
He
said Tom. I don't think Tom.
Did I say Tom?
Yeah.
But
Paul basically just calling these people
Paul,
some crazy stuff.
I'm too many drinks in. Maybe I should drink a half a beer before.
Can't keep up with this guy.
Can't keep up with this guy. He is a heavyweight. The reason we have the New Testament is because all of those churches were freak shows, right? I mean, they got it wrong a million times. And again, Paul had to keep writing to them, "Hey, stop."
Rebuke.
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 I'm not. We're in good company, but honestly, most churches that I've seen, they teach works-based righteousness. It's you believe in Jesus, now this is what you must do. It's like, no. It's like, you believe in Jesus, the end. Well, what if they do this, that, or this? I don't care, because that's not Christianity. So stop saying that on a Christian stage. It's like, if you're not comfortable with the Christian message, don't teach it. Go away. We don't need it. You're teaching what people must do after they've accepted Jesus, which then creates caveats, which then creates a whole bunch of problems, and then you get all kinds of people that do the deconstruction out of Christianity, and I digress. Stop. It's Jesus.
And one thing that I do, maybe it's a issue that's above that, is, and even for like within my own theology,
they think they're helping people,
and within my own sort of understanding of how Christ wants us to do church, like just being open to that criticism too, and just like honestly, like, oh hey, if you're pointing something out, like Paul points like plenty out to some churches, and some churches are like, he goes ham.
Oh
yeah, they're like, oh yeah, that is wrong, we should change. Or at least
should stop.
They actually right like there's something just people just like hating on church because that's a trendy thing to do. But like
women should stop talking. I'm kidding.
He said with a super sarcastic voice. But interesting to go into, because I mean Paul does say that, but like Cole, tell me the reasons why that contextually was said.
You want to go into that?
Why not? Real quick. I think we could.
I thought you were pardoning yourself. Or we were pardoning ourselves, but farewelling.
No.
Okay.
What my understanding
my understanding of it is that, well, it depends on what part of Scripture you're talking about. I do know that at one point there was... okay, so the one I'm thinking of is actually... I don't even know if this is true, and frankly, I don't even know what to do with that verse, if I'm being frankly honest, because it's not my problem. It's like, it's one of those verses where it's like, for me, it's one of those verses where it's like, Scripture says, wives, honor your husbands, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not going to worry about it. The one I have to worry about is, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Okay, that one concerns me. I'll worry about that one. The whole women should be silent in church, I'm going to punt. But what has been explained to me is that at a time when women were not allowed to be educated or speak, Christ gave them the freedom to be able to exercise the same types
Very inclusive.
the same types of freedoms that men could have in that culture, and it was actually being abused by the women. And so Paul was like, okay, yes, you are completely free to do that, but you're actually becoming kind of a disruption now, and we need you to stop. Okay, if you could stop in church, if you could stop, so we could get the message out. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. So it was more of just like a practical kind of.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Whether that's verifiable, I don't know.
Yeah. I've heard similar to that before.
That's kind of what I've heard.
Where a lot of time,
that's
in that culture, there's the midrash, different Hebrew schooling that specifically just boys and men would go through. So there would be a lot of questions and tradition that's passed on to them, but the women of that culture wouldn't necessarily have that. So there would be a lot of questions being asked with that, which are great questions.
I think what you're talking about and what I'm talking about are two different verses.
Yeah, it could be. But I think looking at that holistically is helpful. But it could be the same. But it seems like something like we have our.
You should probably read it.
We have our modern context kind of guard up for that, right? Or we have our own eyes or lens that we're kind of reading that through. Where within that culture, there's it seems to be a very practical and understanding.
Here's what I will say about it.
To defend it, I suppose.
Here's what I will say about it.
Yeah.
There are women in church. They talk all the time, and I don't know any men that have a problem with it. And I have to assume that's because they all know Jesus, and because of Jesus, we are at a point where men and women get to talk at church.
Well, that's pretty good, right?
Good enough for me.
Yeah, that might even be a better
Do
answer.
women talk in church now? Yeah. Is anyone mad about that? No. Okay.
Things get better.
Okay. Works out for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't want to just shy away from something like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just
Are we cherry picking?
To be honest, I only have my own experience, but
they say that slavery isn't really brought up in the Bible, but it seems like because people believed in Jesus, the reason that there were so many anti-slave people is because of the Christians. So,
that's a. I'm sure we can find a real
This kind of goes.
I feel like we can find a really good video that talks about that a little bit. I've never heard that really talked about too much outside of actually Jordan Peterson mentioning that, the imbuing people with inalienable rights. This is sounding oddly like people taking Christian ideas and kind of what we'd say Western ethics, and applying that to all people. So that I'm sure there's. I want to see a video that talks a lot about that.
I'm more of the Eastern Catholic persuasion of tradition versus needing it to be directly in the Bible. So I'm not a scripture alone guy. So just because it's in there doesn't mean it needs to be. I don't know what I'm saying. Too many.
That's not good. Hey, I'm totally fine with just as any theme like that comes up, just talk about that thing because that's interesting. I think people have a lot of questions about stuff.
People think it's a punt when you say, I don't care what that says. I believe in Jesus, and Jesus has transformed me, and I get my ideas from. It's that's the beliefs and Christian beliefs came before the Bible, and there are things that were written.
So here, say that again. I feel like that's an important point.
Our faith was established before the Bible was written.
Mind blown thing here, right? Because it was
the church existed.
The books of the Bible were not written yet.
The church existed before the Bible, and then out of the church, the Bible was written and canonized, and took many forms of canonization. Sometimes Revelation was in there, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes there are other books in there, sometimes they weren't. Different branches of Christianity have different canons. Maybe that section wasn't supposed to be in there. Who knows? What does it matter? Because does it contradict Jesus? I don't know. I don't think so.
So I'm sure each one has their reason for why it is or isn't, right?
I don't know what I'm saying, but basically I think that you focus on Jesus and not specifically on the words that are being said in the Bible. And again, we have English commentaries. We don't actually have English translations. That's another thing. I mean, there's no such thing as a word-for-word translation. That doesn't exist. You have a English commentary. Unless you can read it in its original language, you're reading a commentary or a paraphrased version. Or would it be transliterated? Is that the word? I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be two different kinds of methods.
So, I mean, if it seems like, if you're reading something in the Bible and it makes you uncomfortable because you feel like it's sexist or hateful or it's like, could be a bad translation or your misunderstanding was being read, because when you think about Jesus, nobody has a problem with that guy. So he typically is the most fairest of them all. So
I'm
kind of mumbling or rambling at this point.
No, that's all good. So
nobody has a problem with Jesus. I mean, he's the only person in all religions that they're like, yeah, this guy's cool.
So bring back up our Devo there. Is there anything else that kind of stood out to you, or anything that's challenging for you? Anything that you read, you're just like,
I don't think so.
I feel like it's a challenging part of hearing this, and I remember first hearing it and feeling this exact same way.
Yeah.
And it's a great reminder for it, is that idea of God specifically made you and will use you in a great way that glorifies Him, and it's not, to put bad words to it, the right thing to do is not to put that down. You know? Like, and I feel like a lot of times we feel the tension or our fighting against the sense to put ourselves down. Where God is just like, man, I created you for this purpose.
For such a time as this.
Yeah. For such a time as this, and dang it, I love you, and I'm glorified to have you resting in that, enjoying that.
Is there some sort of psalm or something where it talks about how you were specifically placed at the specific time for His purposes?
Not that comes to mind immediately for me.
I'll have, man, we should
look it up. Actually,
we should have.
Yeah,
I should have read this before we started filming.
I mean, I like the impromptu hot take on it. It's
I do think there's some sort of verse in the Old Testament that David wrote where it's like, you were placed at this specific time in history for this specific reason.
Yeah. But well, I'd say like that's something that I still.
Nothing's an accident. God has no plan B. If you believe there's a God, He put you here for a reason at this specific point, and it was to be, the attorney in the office doing his work, or the mom staying home and raising her kids, or the dad driving, stuck in traffic for 40 minutes. I mean, you were put here for that time.
Or the student or looking at their desk right now saying, I got to write this paper.
Yeah, I mean, sit in that and abide with Him in that moment, and see what kind of worship manifests from it.
Yeah.
See what kind of work is produced when you abide in Him in that. Right? It's, as Paul tells us to live our lives quietly. I think for that specific reason, allow ourselves to manifest, allow the Spirit to manifest in our daily lives. Let our lives be worship, like an incense going up to the Father. That's making copies at work. That's making a sales call. That's being a tired dad coming home and still having enough energy to play with the kids, or listen to your wife's story, or you know what I mean, like.
Yeah, it's definitely encouraging in that sense. So, like, hey, it's one of those things where it's just, thank you, Doc. Thanks for that.
Doc.
Thanks, Doc. All right, man. Yeah.
Oh, who was the saint that would wash dishes and people would come from miles just to see him wash dishes? Because
I haven't heard of this before.
Yeah.
What?
Look it up.
I don't think it was St. Francis of Assisi. Sorry, buddy.
No, he was the bird. Saint Francis.
You'd pray for animals.
Francis was the
and dead
bird.
people.
Was the bird prayer? What? Oh gosh, it starts with a B, I think.
Wasn't Bonifacius, was it?
No, he's the Christmas tree guy.
Bernard.
No, what saint was famous for washing? This is gonna be fun. Dishes.
Probably gonna give you the right answer though. Like I feel like that's a good answer. Good question.
Brother Lawrence.
Brother Lawrence. I don't
That's
know
what
the
it
story
was.
of Brother Lawrence.
ChatGPT gave the wrong answer actually, and it wasn't until I read Saint Martin de Porres, and I was like, no, it's actually Saint Lawrence.
Saint Lawrence.
So, but I think they would. Oh wait. Is famous for his humility and acts of service, including washing dishes. No, that's not what I'm looking for. But yeah, they would would be in like a state of like ecstasy and bliss from washing dishes.
Oh yeah,
because
he's
would
just
abide,
having a time.
He would just abide in the spirit, you know.
And people come to
and they come be like, "What is wrong with this guy?" You know. But he would wash the dishes to the glory of God, you know. Martin Luther King Jr. said something about, like, you know, do your job, and it's a super famous thing that he said, but he said to do your ordinary work to the point where the heavenly hosts would come, like if you're a street sweeper, sweep the streets so well that the heavenly hosts would come down and go, look at these streets. Who has swept these streets? You know, it's yeah. So do that.
Do it to the glory of God. Glory of God.
Hopefully, I'm not too toasted, and what I'm saying is coherent. So.
I think it's good. But yeah, I think sign off on that. I think that's an encouraging spot. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Well, hey guys, tuning in again. Thanks for being here and joining us as we go through another thing that Doc has wrote for us, and this one was a relatively recent one. And just being able to let it soak in a little bit, listening to the ideas and the misconceptions to break, and the cool Bible history, and the weird facts, and all the neat things that kind of go in and around this this Devo for us today.
I wouldn't use the word facts. I don't know if they're facts.
Interesting tidbits.
I don't know if they're verified information.
Maybe historical tidbits.
The whole Gehenna thing kind of fell on its face when I brought that up. So.
Hey, it's still an interesting idea.
That was half right.
Yeah.
That was half right.
Good enough.
Good enough. Good enough. 1.5
nice.
effort. 1.5.
You didn't pass, but
yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. You know, I remember instead of multitasking, I do like 1.5.
Oh yeah, what was that called again?
Half. I don't remember what we called it.
No, not multitasking. I am
half-tasking.
Half-tasking. Yes.
I half-task a lot of stuff.
Thanks for half-tasking with us. See you guys. Half-tasking. I was talking about that today. I was talking about that with Pastor Stephen today, and I couldn't remember the word for it, but I was just like, dude, a friend of mine, he came up with the word for like when you're multitasking, but you feel like you're just spinning your tires and doing nothing. You're a you're not doing times 2 of the work. You're doing less work. You're doing 0.5 of the work.
You're actually making it worse. Oh shit, that's funny.
That was fun though. How do you